In this episode of Highlight Sundays, iPhone 5s problems and planes. Hello and welcome back to Highlight Sundays. It is the 39th week of 2013 and here are your highlights. Now, as you know, the iPhone 5s has recently come out. It features, among other things, a pretty interesting fingerprint sensor. This, of course, is a means for you to unlock your phone, but it has actually received a lot of flack for various security reasons, which is why today we devote our first 3 articles to looking at the various security issues of the iPhone 5s. So before we even jump into looking at the fingerprint sensor itself, let us first take a look at an issue that has been raised that apparently affects even the existing iPhone 5s. This article comes from Gizmodo and is entitled, "Anyone Can Blow Past Your iOS 7 Lock Screen to Make Calls." Now, if you actually take a look at the article itself, there's actually going to be a video where a person demonstrates how this is done. It's not exactly rocket science, you just switch over to the dialer, enter a number and keep pressing that dial button until the phone crashes. Yep, pressing the dial button causes the phone to crash, and the worst part is the call is actually placed. Now, as if this issue wasn't actually bad enough, we have another article from 9to5Mac, which is entitled, "iOS 7 Lock Screen Control Center Bug Leaves Potential Access to User Photos." This is another exploit kinda similar to the one we just looked at, which basically involves a person who doesn't know how to get past your lock screen, but by pressing a certain combination of buttons, gets access to your phone anyway. This particular one actually requires a more complicated set of steps to actually achieve that, and can actually be blocked in a way. You see, this particular vulnerability is actually associated with the control center feature of iOS 7, so if you actually disable the control center, this will not be a problem. So I guess this becomes less of an issue as compared to the making a call feature. According to the earlier article, that particular exploit does not have a fix of any kind, so there is an issue. Now, just to very quickly add on to the video, as of the time of editing, this bug has actually been fixed. Apple has actually rolled out a new version of iOS 7.0.2, and that addresses these issues. For more information about this, please head down to the video description. You will find an article that actually covers this new update. Oh, and we haven't even started talking about a fingerprint sensor. In fact, let us move on to that. Hackers claim to have cracked the TouchID fingerprint sensor of the iPhone 5s. That is claimed by this article by GSMArena. According to the article, a group called the Chaos Computer Club actually found a way to get around the fingerprint scanner. While their method is not particularly easy to pull off, it still shows that there might be some issues with using fingerprints for the purpose of authentication. Essentially, their method involves actually taking a photo of a person's fingerprint, printing it out using a laser printer to actually, get the physical ridges, and then actually making a cast of that using some kind of a rubber mold, and they can actually use that to get past the fingerprint authentication. Now, as mentioned by the article, this shouldn't be a huge cause of concern, seeing as that, that's quite a lot of steps to take to break into an iPhone. Now, I will also provide a link to the Chaos Computing Club's webpage, where they actually try to make an argument to say that essentially you shouldn't be using biometrics for any form of authentication. While they make a very good point about the fact that, you can't actually change your fingerprints and you leave copies of it everywhere, what they're actually calling for is a full removal of actually using fingerprints as a means of authentication. And I don't know if such drastic means are really needed just yet. At any rate, they do show that this is a technology that can be abused, so it remains to see how we choose to strengthen the security on this front. We've covered a multitude of different iPhone security issues today, and you'll find links to all of them in the video description. So now that we get a chance to look at something completely different, let's talk about planes. This article from Ars Technica is entitled, "Finally, we won't have to power off during takeoff and landing." Now, it has always been a rule that we have to switch off all electronic devices, especially those that communicate, during takeoff and landing. This particular regulation is about to get a 180 Apparently you can now keep your mobile phones, your other electronic devices on, even during takeoff and landing. Having said that, you will of course not be able to do things like make calls and texts, use any form of data. All those restrictions still apply. It's just that you don't have to switch it off, and I guess that's one less hassle. The article ends off on a reassuring note saying that this shouldn't be a huge issue, seeing as that, well, most flights nowadays actually have its whole slew of electronics, things like in-flight entertainment or Wi-Fi, and in order to even have these things in the first place, the actual plane itself does have to be, resilient to a certain extent. So by the sounds of it, this new regulation will not make things dangerous in any way. We move on to our last article from Gizmodo. This one is entitled, "Learn the Complete History of the Web with this Timeline." Now, the article itself doesn't say a lot, but it does have a link to this nifty little web page that actually has, well, a timeline of the internet. It actually starts way back in the early 1910s, and you skip forward, the events are kind of sparse, and once you hit the late 80s and the 90s, the events start piling up. I won't actually talk too much about this, seeing as that this is something you have to experience for yourself, so do head down to the link in the video description, and you can check out this cool little timeline. And that's all the time we have for this episode of Highlight Sundays. Just to very quickly recap the little vlog thing you saw on Friday, we are going to mix up the Wednesday episodes. We're going to have a mixture of vlogs and tutorials. So yes, look forward to that. Hopefully this will create a more personal kind of feel in the channel, which is of course something I've been trying to do, and hopefully this would take it one step further. So the first episode of this vlog show is going to come up this Wednesday, and from then on we're going to alternate between the two. So if you haven't watched the video where I actually announced this, you can actually click on the annotation link wherever I put it on screen, and you can check it out. But well, that's all there is for today's episode of Highlight Sundays. If you have any comments, queries or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow the official Twitter account for this channel at twitter.com/0612TV. As always, I appreciate every like, favorite and subscription you give me. But until next time, you're watching 0612TV.